So let's face it, you probably just love using your phone, you never get off it. Well, what if there was a reason you could use it to actually improve your health? Wouldn't that justify its use just a little bit more for you? So what I want to talk to you about today is how you can use your phone to actually potentially improve your health. Most importantly, what I want to talk about is energy utilization mechanisms and why these things are so important for you. So what I want to talk about today to start with is the energy process itself. How do we actually make energy? Because people aren't generally aware of it. You know, we kind of see energy as a thing, but we actually have multiple different things that come together to form energy. So we have this biochemical pathway called our Krebs cycle, and our Krebs cycle itself, really, this thing's really all about producing energy. So the way it does that is it takes two sources of nutrient and converts it to an energy that we can utilize. So the first one is glucose. So glucose we commonly know as sugar, but it's kind of a little bit more complicated than that. Glucose is a very, very simple form of sugar. And glucose really is derived from, when we talk about the human body, two things. Number one is our protein intake, and number two is our carbohydrate intake. And both of these come together in the bloodstream to produce glucose. Glucose then gets pushed into the Krebs cycle to produce energy. And it does that through a whole lot of intermediate steps. One of the key ones is being pyruvate. And the side effect of converting through from pyruvate into acetyl-CoA, which is our main fat side of things, is a process that results in the production of lactic acid. And this lactic acid is a really, really important marker for us because lactic acid has the potential to change our blood pH, which can change a whole gamma of things in the human body. And even back as the 60s, Otto Warburg won a Nobel Prize for associating acidity with various different things, oxygenation and even potentially cancer cells as well, way back then. So the second way we have in is through fat and a process known as beta oxidation. And beta oxidation is a really, really important process as well. So this process is important because it gives us a lot more bang for our buck. So we get about 9 calories worth of energy from every gram of fat. Well, we get about 4 calories from every gram of protein and carbohydrate. So it's a really important mechanism. The most important thing that we have with this pathway is that we don't produce lactic acid and we don't produce another hormone called insulin as a result. So this is really key. Yes, I know there are some fats that do stimulate insulin, but we're going to keep it simple for now. So when we start looking at glucose, the problem with this pathway and utilizing glucose is firstly it elevates insulin. And we've spoken about insulin quite significantly over a number of different videos now, where insulin creates a huge problem with inflammation, cardiovascular health, weight gain, all these kind of things. And this is really what we're talking about here in this pathway. Is because the second thing, as I said before, is inflammation. And this is generally produced by this substance called prostaglandin, which is also triggered by our insulin. Insulin is also a fat storage hormone. It's designed to take part of the energy that you consume in carbohydrate and protein and convert it into a storable form of energy, which can only be done by a substance called triglyceride, which is a specific form of fat. So we need to understand that if you're trying to lose weight, this is a really important concept for you to understand, is that what you're actually having is not a fat problem, it's an energy utilization problem. In other words, you're storing too much energy for yourself. That's the issue. If we think about it that way, we start understanding a little bit differently our mindset in trying to reduce weight. And the other thing that really is increased, there's a whole lot more, but the other thing that's really important that's increased is a substance called thromboxane. And this is a clotting agent that also has an effect on things like cholesterol and cardiovascular disease. So we can see this pathway is associated with a lot of negative issues. It doesn't mean it's bad and we should never use it. We just got to be careful that we don't over depend upon that pathway as our main source of energy, which is a critical factor. So what does all this mean and how does this all work? Well, there's a cool little tool that you can get on your phone now called MyFitnessPal. It's an awesome little program. We use it here in our office all the time to track people's foods. The program will give you a whole lot of information in terms of exercise and weight control, that kind of stuff, and that's okay, but it's a very generic, and sometimes when you're doing generic things it can be quite dangerous, so I prefer not to rely on the program in any way, shape or form, but it's a great way of tracking food, which is really important. It's got a massive food database and it's very, very easy to access as well. So this is the program. When you open it up, this is what we kind of see. We can use the little plus here, this thing. If we click on it, it'll open up and allow us to add different foods. There's a barcode scanner in it as well, which makes it really easy. And once you've entered all your foods into it, there's a whole lot of different ways. Different platforms operate it differently. But if we go into we go into the nutritional aspect of things, we can get this breakdown here, which is in our macro section. Which is what you do when you click on the pie chart, and it will give you a breakdown of where you're getting your calories from during the day. So this is really important because this calorie intake will have a huge effect on what we're seeing here with our energy production systems. So if we have a look here at this person as an example, the carbohydrate is making up 42% of their total calories for the day, fat is making up 39%, and protein is making up 19%. In more newer versions of this software, there'll be a little bracket behind it with a number in it, and that'll tell you the number of grams of that macro that you're consuming as well. So it's a really, really handy program. So how does this relate into this? Well, really, you need to be properly assessed to work out what your actual ratios should be. From the Western world though, most of the Western world is consuming a diet that's up around the 60% carbohydrate mark, which we know, generally speaking, seems to be too high for most people. Tends to trigger off their insulin issues and tends to trigger off inflammation, a whole lot of other things that we see here in our office. So for most people, we really want to bring this down. There are some reports that you should be down around the 90 to 100 gram mark, while others talk about 150 mark. Either way, we want to bring the carbohydrate down. If you want to look at it at a percentage, there's some talk that if you break it down into percentages where we're heading somewhere in the order of a 40, 30 and 30 mark, we get a nice little breakdown in where that is. But really what you want to do is trial and error for yourself. So if we spend, say, 3 days at a certain value, so we might have it, if we're looking at a percentage perspective, we might have it at 3 days at 40%, then 3 days at 30%, and maybe even 3 days at 20%, and just monitor to see how you feel. For some people it goes better the other way, where we're at 20% first, then at 30%, then at 40%, and seeing if you feel better on that low level and then working your way up and looking for the point where you just don't seem to feel very well anymore. You seem to feel a lot more tired, a lot more flat. Maybe you're starting to put weight back on, things like this. So as I said, in our office we properly monitor this and we have specific ways of working things out for people to help control all of these factors. But you can trial and have a play around with yourself. Use the MyFitness program, the PAL program. It works a treat. It's a really, really handy tool that you can use. It's very, very quick and easy to learn. But anyway, guys, if you have any questions about the MyFitnessPal program, want to know how to use it in more detail, just post them up, or otherwise send me a message and I'll help you in any way that I can. Otherwise, guys, remember to all about adding use to your life, and we'll catch you in the next vid. See you guys.